Again, welcome everybody. My name's Bill Zimmerman. I am currently in transition here at the university. I was the Assistant Director for Employer Engagement with the Career and Professional Development Center. I am transitioning to a University Navigator position with University College. So, be that as it may, I'll be the host for tonight's panel. I also have one of my colleagues here in the room who's learning my position. He's going to be pinch hitting, helping out from University College, Jeremy Reisinger. He kind of waved there in the back of the room. I hope I'm not blocking him. But this is a panel on issues of LGBTQIA issues in the workplace. And I know I just used issues twice, but so be it. What I'll do here in a second is I'm going to have folks introduce themselves. But before we do that, I do want to thank HRT Solutions for helping co-sponsoring this event. What we've been doing since we've had a little bit of trouble, for whatever reason, students don't want to take free food. So what we've transitioned to is giving them little coupons for the campus Chick-fil-A that they can either get a free 12-piece nugget or a free chicken sandwich. So that seems to work better. I got a lot of, oh, wow, this is so awesome. So for the folks who attend in person, that is what you'll get. We usually give out about 20 of them is what we cap it at. So, because the size of the room isn't much bigger than 20. But anyway, again, thank you to HRT Solutions for their co-sponsorship.
Our joint meeting.
And now let's go ahead and introduce our panelists. I'm going to start in alphabetical order as I have them. So we'll start with
I love you.
well, hey, Nathan, can you do me a favor and mute, please?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No problem. Thank you. Kayla Amino, who's an area coordinator for graduate and family housing at the University of Florida.
Hi, y'all. Like Bill said, I'm Kayla Amino, you, she, her. I currently work at the University of Florida. I used to work in residence life at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Bill actually was one of my old supervisors, so I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. We appreciate you having you. We love it when we have alumni on the calls. Next, we have Bree Holloway, who is a talent acquisition specialist from Sherwin-Williams.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bree Holloway. Like Bill said, I am from Sherwin-Williams. Been working with the company now for almost 5 years. So really excited just to talk with you guys about, the LGBTQ community and what kind of issues we face in the workplace today. My pronouns are she, her, but I also can go by they, them as well.
Next, I have Jessica Eberly, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but if I'm not, please correct me, who's the CEO of HRT Solutions.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Eberly. I'm the CEO of HRT Solutions and also Equality Careers. I do use she, her pronouns, and we actually launched Equality Careers in June of this year to go along with Pride, and it is an LGBTQIA plus specific job board. So looking forward to being on this panel tonight.
Thank you. And then finally, I believe I have Kelly Viff, who's a field recruiter for Sheets.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I work with Sheets. I've worked with Sheets for 13 years now, almost 14. My pronouns are she, her, and currently I am a field recruiter. I'm working under the talent acquisitions department. I am primarily in the Pittsburgh market, but we have our positions all over where Sheets is spread. So really excited to get to talk to you guys about some of the things that we offer with our company and then just learning from everyone else that's here as well.
I'm actually going to pull the chat up and onto our main screen here, so that way I can actually see if anything comes in. But throughout the evening, we'll give the students who are here in the room, as well as the folks who are on Zoom with us, if they have a question, they can feel free to, raise a hand, put it in the chat. We'll ask it. But I guess first, we usually start out with, and I know you did it as part of your introductions, but tell us a little bit more, I guess, about yourself, your organization, your current position, and I guess how it kind of interplays with the LGBTQIA issues in the workplace topic tonight. So any of you can go first. I know Kayla's already unmuted, so it might be easier for her to start, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure, that works. So I've been working in higher education since I was a sophomore in undergrad in different areas, even though my primary focus has been in residence life, so living on campus. I actually did my master's in the Pride Center. So I've been working with LGBTQ folks, students, all different ages, within the community, within the university as well. For, what is that now? Like 10, 11 years? I don't know. Time feels weird at this moment. But I've worked a lot with integrating it and how does that look in the on-campus setting. As I said, I work at the University of Florida, and Florida is a very big hotbed right now of just diversity and inclusion in general being under attack. So I think with what my position has been, especially being a university official, we have to kind of navigate those politics of making sure our students are supported while also, again, navigating our budget is getting cut, the language even that we're allowed to use. But a lot of that focus has been, even though the primary population that I work with is graduate students, their families, undergrads as well. How does that show up in the LGBTQIA as well? I also serve on our faculty and staff committee that looks at inclusivity within all aspects of the university. So the languages that we're using, our policies, why do we need to continually ask sex, gender, all of that? So really looking at those kind of aspects.
Thank you. Jessica, you're already unmuted, so maybe we'll come to you next.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just talk a little bit about why I mentioned that we launched Equality Careers in June of this year. And I'll just talk a little bit more about why. And so I was working on a search. I own a recruiting company, and I was working on a search, and they were looking to hire someone that was within the LGBTQIA plus community and someone that was very able to work with people that are living with HIV. And so I decided to start doing some digging and see where we could post or source candidates, and realized very quickly that it was difficult to find a spot that I felt like was reputable and that would be able to get us great candidates. And so I thought, if a safe space for the LGBT community doesn't exist, let's go ahead and create one. And so that's kind of where I saw that there was an opportunity. And I think, speaking a little bit more so to the transgender community, oftentimes we see people that maybe don't feel comfortable leaving their job, don't feel comfortable asking for promotions, because once again, it's an opportunity where they have to reintroduce themselves. They may be working in a situation where they are using what they call a dead name. And so those are barriers that can be created. And so we created Equality Careers because we wanted a spot that organizations could signal to people that were applying and looking for jobs, that whether they're coming in for an interview or they're starting on their first day, they can be comfortable coming in, using their pronouns, being who they are, talking about their family, whatever that means to them. So that's a little bit more about why we started it, but it's definitely something that's seen across, multiple industries.
Excellent. Good to hear. I don't know who would like to go next, either Bree or Kelly. Bree, go for it.
I'll go for it. Like I said, I'm with Sherwin-Williams, and I actually recruit for our management and sales training program. It's a postgraduate program, and it's the same one that I actually started with today. And so a lot of the work that I do now as like an early talent recruiter is really focusing on people's intersectionalities. Realistically, I like to focus on, kind of hit on the ones that like I fall in myself. Like, I'm a Black queer woman, and so obviously I do want to make sure that, I bring people in who have an understanding of the community that I'm with, and that you can find space here at Sherwin-Williams. I know it's probably crazy enough to say because this is an industry of paints and coatings and things like that. So this is going to be a male-dominated field, right? But this is also going to be an industry that is also dominated by straight men. So we want to make sure that coming in to our company and things like that, that you're able to find a home here with us, just like I have. So that's my goal.
And then Kelly.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I've worked with Sheets for almost 14 years. 10 of those years were spent in the actual stores. I was a store manager. So being with the company for so long, I've definitely seen the entire company progress in a very rapid way. Currently, I am a field recruiter, so I am more of the corporate side now. I recruit for stores. So still kind of dealing with store level and just kind of managing, like I said, the Pittsburgh area is primarily like my domain or my area that I focus on. And since I personally deal with more so stores, just kind of what does that process look like and how can we make it more inclusive from the get-go? That the very instance that person clicks on our jobs website, are they seeing people who look like them, who sound like them, who act like them? Is that inclusive right off the bat? Do we have that rep in the community? So just certain things that we're involved in, what can we add into the process through like their applications? So we have spots for like preferred names, pronouns, and continuing that all throughout, if we do move forward with hiring and getting them started, our employees, we have now on their name tags, they can put their pronouns if they prefer. So definitely a lot of things that we've added in within the last couple of years. I personally am on the IDEA committee that we have, which is inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. And then I'm also part of a subgroup with that with Elevate. So again, just dealing with diversity in the workplace and making sure that we're doing the best that we can to make sure that everyone feels welcome coming into our company.
Excellent. Thank you all. I want to go into kind of more of our first question. I know some of you kind of drifted in there, but what are some of the common challenges folks from the LGBTQIA or individuals identifying as LGBTQIA have in the workplace? And we'll drift into the second part of that, but just let's start like just what are some of the challenges? And I know some of you mentioned it about the issue of dead names, the issue of applications, the issue of politics, etc. Jessica, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think one of the big pieces is everybody just wants to go to work and be themselves. And so if you are spending a lot of time hiding who you are, not talking about who you are outside of work, trying to hide who you are, it wastes a lot of productivity time that you could actually be doing work. And so by creating a space that someone can come in and talk about, I kind of mentioned, talking about your family, whoever or whatever that means to you, because families mean so many different things to different people. We've even had to make some adjustments on our team that family for a lot of our team means their dogs and cats. And so kind of as people are adjusting, like what does family mean, and being able to come in and talk about that and not feel fearful at work that there's going to be any type of, retaliation, that type of thing. So I think creating an environment where somebody can feel like they can be themselves is incredibly important. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. I know a lot of people have put on their Zoom, what their pronouns are, introducing yourself with your pronouns. People that are in, like husband-wife relationships will often say like my partner, those types of things. So using more inclusive language also helps for people to feel more comfortable. in making people feel like, hey, I'm kind of welcome here. So that's one thing that I wanted to mention, is just making people feel like, whatever your family is, you're welcome and you can kind of talk about it.
Other folks, other things that you see are challenges beyond some of the things that obviously were already mentioned.
I definitely will say that I do agree with what Jessica was saying, changing that wording. And it's hard to change wording company wide, because you may have people who have been with a company for so long, and that's just not, they have that spiel in their mind and they just go with that flow. So it definitely takes time, but I think just putting that out there consistently and making those changes is huge. Something else that I had noted too was, which you mentioned, was fear. Are they going to be accepted when they walk in? And are they going to have someone there that they can even relate to? They may be accepted, but are they going to have someone to where they feel comfortable talking to and relating back to them, and truly feeling accepted once they've gotten started with the company?
If I can jump in here. So like Kelly, I did also start in our stores, right? So, you're always going to be public facing if you are in anything that's like in customer relationship management or anything like that, working in retail. And so obviously, working with the public, a lot of our customer base is not really well versed in, the language, the changing of the times and things like that. So even coming into work where you think that, your team is accepting of you and things like that, maybe you realize that your customers are using language that you realize that they may not accept you. So those are some challenges that you face, right? I'm, being very specific because I do work alongside, the construction industry. And so, they're not known for being like the most open, the most inclusive and things like that. So, trying to get past that barrier for a lot of us here at Sherwin-Williams is definitely something that, we face inside of our stores, but just making sure that like as a manager, as a team, like, that we don't tolerate that inside of our stores, things that like our employees are protected when they come into work every single day. That's something that's really important to like us here.
Yeah, and just to, kind of add on to some of those things, some of the challenges that we have seen is when the like kind of blanket over like, oh, I have one person who's had this experience, so therefore all of LGBTQIA has this experience. And it's like, oh no, even if I have the same identity as someone, there are so many other parts of my identity that kind of go into making that a unique experience. So having those conversations, not only with like coworkers, but upper admin, things like that. And also kind of having, June is Pride Month, so there's rainbows everywhere. And then July 1st hits and they're like, what's LGBTQ? So some of those challenges is almost the performative things that we have seen in here, and how do we go beyond performative? And fortunately, in the area that I work in, even though we are in Florida, which again, like I had said earlier, is a lot right now, that we have created a community, fortunately, that protects our students and has those conversations and are being voices for students who are not in the room and for coworkers who are not in the room, in using the privileges that we do have to kind of uphold that space for others who don't have that.
Yeah, definitely hear that intersectionality of the various identities. See, I'm using that sociology words they taught me in grad school. But the intersectionality of all of our identities leads, no one person's experience is like the others. We did have two questions come into the chat, and I'm actually going to take them out of order. I'm going to start with the bottom one first, because I think it's interesting, and I know Kayla, you're already living it because the magic word Florida came up here. So how has your company talked about how they would handle if anti-trans laws that were passed in Florida were to happen in PA? And I know for some of you that may be difficult to answer based on your position in your company. or the type of organization or company that you work for. But I guess, I don't know, Kayla, if you want to say what the impact is, because some of us may not even know what exactly those laws may have impacted. Again, being that you're living it a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's impacted a lot, I would say, working in education, especially higher education. A lot of it really has kind of focused on like K through 12. Because working at the University of Florida, we are also a government, like a federal government thing. So we have a little bit more leniency, because that's where a lot of our funding comes. But even in our, higher education, a lot of our diversity funds are getting cut, offices are getting cut. We've stopped some of the courses that are being taught. And then, so in the public schools, as well, with K through 12, the bathroom, banned books, banned courses. I have a friend who works in our public school system, and she got brought into a meeting because she had her pronouns in her email signature, and a parent brought it up, and it's the real threat of, if I even have this conversation, I could get pulled in, I could be put on job suspension, or I could be removed. Florida's an at-will state. So I could throw a program, or I could be having these conversations with a student who might not have the full language, and they have thoughts and feelings, and have used derogatory language, and I have a conversation, and then I'm being called in, of like, you can't do that, like we can't teach critical race theory, and the conversations that would help, I think, learn what actually critical race theory is being taken away. So there's a lot of clashing, especially with folks who are trying to advocate and trying to fight, to have, people just being able to live and live authentically, and those who are very empowered by the politics and the laws that are being passed. So funding is a big one. Being at will is a big one as well, and just losing the resources, not only socially but medically as well.
Yeah,
So-
definitely hear the challenges. Jessica, go ahead.
So I would just say, for anybody who isn't paying attention to what's happening in Florida, it's terrifying. So a lot of the laws that are being placed in Florida, also in Texas, there's some other legislation that's happening in in Tennessee as well. So if you're not paying attention, you probably should be, just even from a human rights standpoint. But the legislation is definitely terrifying. And one of the things that we're seeing, a lot of our clients are corporate. And so one of the things that we're seeing is a huge threat to DEI spend. And what that can look like is cutting back on programs, whether that even be not just LGBTQIA plus programs, but certified women programs that help DBEs, people with disabilities, other minorities. All of that spend is kind of in question and being attacked, and that's across the United States. And so one of the things and one of the strategies that we're seeing a lot of corporations take is there's ESG, which is like environmental sustainability and governance. And so we're seeing a lot of people roll their DEI programs, and instead of letting go of DEI professionals, they're rolling them up under that. And then they're still like having their programs. So that's something that we're seeing a big shift from a corporate standpoint. But as mentioned, the legislation does change from day to day, week to week. But the attacks, particularly on the transgender community, continue. And it definitely continues in Florida. So I know Kayla is probably kind of in a weird spot because she does work for the government and she's here representing the University of Florida. But it's pretty scary what's going on there, and kind of makes you think a little bit more about, as we're looking forward to, the 2024 election, and what that looks like, paying very close attention to what's happening.
Bree, Kelly, other thoughts, other perspectives?
Yeah, no problem. So, Sherwin-Williams is a global company, but there's plenty of stores here throughout like the US. So obviously, we have stores and operations here in Florida. One thing that I'm involved here in with here at Sherwin-Williams is a couple of our employee resource groups, whether that be our African American network, our Pride Works, our first generation students. Like I'm involved in all of these things, but a lot of our employee resource groups in Florida, like Jessica and Kayla have like pointed out, right, have had to, halt their type of programming and things like that, and what they do. So we just have to make sure that we're pivoting and making sure that we're keeping our employees safe. So maybe, we don't have a Pride Works, headquartered out of like our Florida districts anymore. So now we are, working with them, more directly out of maybe, our New York branch, or maybe, something like that. We want to make sure that we're keeping our employees safe. But realistically, like if our employees are not feeling safe in their stores, the respective stores that they are at, I'll get to you, sir, give me one sec. That they're at, we want to make sure to pivot them into some places that's going to be a little bit more welcoming, where they can walk into the door, right? So if you're down in Miami and you're not really feeling safe within your stores, then we have to pivot, right? We're going to bring you, we have the privilege, the opportunity to bring you to a different store, transfer you to get you someplace that's a little bit safe, and using you, just making sure that our employees are where they need to be to perform their job functions safely. But I know Survey has a couple of questions.
Survey,
Yeah, hi.
go ahead.
Good. Okay. I was gonna ask, I was actually the one that asked that question, and I kind of wanted to add a little add-on question for that.
Absolutely.
So Florida obviously it's in a little bit of a situation, but and this is obviously a little bit of a terrifying thought, but I was mainly curious to see if companies had been considering, especially with those programs, considering what action they would like to take if it impacts their state. So let's say if you're running a store in Pennsylvania and those laws start to get passed in Pennsylvania, whatever happens with the 2024 election, if there isn't a place to just put them, like what would happen? Like, is there a situation in which just everything would have to stop, I guess?
You know what? That's a great question. I don't think we've given much thought to that about like our stores, right? We are in a position now, like a time where like everything is happening piece by piece, whether, a state allows, abortion is going to be completely different, across state lines and things like that. So there is like no clear guidance, essentially coming from like the government, company, or things like that, of what exactly happens, based on like anti-discrimination and things like that, for trans folk, for us here. So realistically, much like everybody else, we are just playing it day by day and ear by ear. And that is the unfortunate reality of where we're at, in terms of like protecting our employees and making sure that, we are, upholding our ideals of integrity and things like that for our employees. So I don't have a clear answer for you at this very moment. I wish I did, but we're just like everybody else. We're trying to get through day by day, and I just don't have an answer in this very moment.
I can agree with that as well. We aren't in Florida, but that doesn't mean that issues aren't going to affect us in the states that we are in at some point in time. I personally am not aware if this has been a conversation, but just kind of, like where you said, playing it ear by ear, and just kind of adapting and doing what we have to do to make sure that our employees are feeling safe and comfortable where they are. But I do really appreciate that question, and I'm interested to see where my president and vice president's heads are at on that. So we actually have a meeting tomorrow, so I'm going to bring that up.
Yeah, again, from what I'm hearing, it's kind of we're not sure how we would handle it, because number one, especially with some of these organizations, they're multi-state, so things in Ohio would be different from things in Pennsylvania, would be different from things in Virginia, North Carolina, and up to New York, and New Jersey. And it really depends on local law, state law, federal law, what changes, when it changes. So it's unfortunately a very turbulent time for many things, this topic included.
I will add one more thing with the University of Florida specifically. I will say I think we have a little bit more protection with UF. And I know that a good chunk of that, because you're always going to have little pockets who kind of like get through with stuff. But I will say, once all of this stuff has been happening with Roe v. Wade, with everything else that's going on here in Florida, that a lot of the employers in the different departments, because there's so many here, have been very open about the pushing back and putting those protections in place where we can, and having the advocacy for that. So there is that fine line of what we can do, what we can protect, but there is a lot of advocacy within the university as well. So yes, we do have the compliance stuff when it comes to funding and things like that, but where we can push and where we can support, that is where a lot of our efforts are going within UF. So that is something that I think I appreciate about like the higher leadership, because you see it with the folks who are like on the ground working with students, but even higher up, we see that as well, which is encouraging, but I know will always be more that we can do.
Okay, I hope that at least, I know it's a difficult question to answer, so I hope at least it was, I don't know if it was a great answer, but it was an answer. Yeah, that shoulder shrug, I think, is a good feeling to have about it, I think, at this point. But let's get back to your first question though, too, because I do want to kind of see if anybody has some other thoughts on that. The first question that survey kind of asked us was, does your company need to meet a quota when it comes for whom they hire? Or I guess for those of you who maybe aren't necessarily doing the hiring, have you heard of quotas, or do you know if your particular organization has particular quotas or even targets about whom they hire?
So
Jessica, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just give so our company, so HRT Solutions, we employ a little under 30 employees ourselves. We personally don't have any type of quota that we have to meet. And most of our clients, which are large corporations, do not have a quota that they necessarily have to meet as well. However, most of the large organizations have realized that there's an ROI in having people come on board that are diverse. So, diversity can mean a lot of different things. And it's very interesting to me to see different corporations, what they consider diversity versus not, because it's different based from organization to organization and based on what they track. And then that kind of goes through and follows where they target. One thing I will tell you is we do a lot of work within the university relations space, and the university relations space is often a great spot to try to get diversity within your organization, because a lot of times people that are coming into organizations straight out of university are what I call like a fresh set of eyes. So regardless of what your background is, it's often a great opportunity to get people into your university to kind of take a look or into your organization and say, like, this is something that we should change. This is something that we should do differently. And so, I was at a conference, and I might be a little off on my my metrics here, but by the time that we hit 2030, 70% of the workforce will be millennials and Gen Z, and well over 12% even right now identify as, within the LGBT community or non-binary. And that number is going to continue to climb. And it looks like that potential number could be over 30% by the time we hit 2030. And so if you think about it from that standpoint, not being inclusive of, if you're not going to be inclusive, people will find somewhere else to work. And so it just makes good business sense to include the LGBT community now. Because even though it's 2023 now, it'll be 2030 before we know it. And if you're not progressing with the organization, like if your organization's not progressing, you're not going to be able to get top talent. So I think sometimes if you take a look at it from that standpoint, and oftentimes when you're working with different corporations, you kind of have to take it from a dollars and cents standpoint, like how is this going to impact my pocketbook, which I'm sure a lot of people don't necessarily want to hear, but that's the truth. So thinking about it from a standpoint of, how can we persuade people from, a monetary standpoint that if we stand still and aren't progressing, we're not going to get top talent within our organization, and kind of taking it from that lens.
Thank you. Bree.
So at Sherwin-Williams, we don't necessarily have quotas in the sense that, we need to hire, 3 Black people here. We need to hire, 4 people who identify themselves as non-binary here. Like, we don't necessarily have that. Most companies, I can say, especially if you receive any sort of like government funding, though, they do have, I want to say, not necessarily quotas, but at least, a percentage of people that they're expected to hire for us for a year, right? So here at Sherwin-Williams, obviously, like I said, male-dominated industry. So one of our goals here that we have, one of the things that we do track is the amount of women that we bring on into our organization, people of color, and Spanish-speaking hires, right? Those are our 3 buckets that we fall into, and who we track, because we do receive money from the government. We're not government funded, but we do have contracts with the government. So of course, we want to make sure that we are, being an equal opportunity employer. And so that is why we don't necessarily have quotas, but we do keep track. We do want to make sure that we are consistently progressing in who exactly we do hire. So I can't necessarily speak for like somebody like Kayla, where she works, where she is fully government funded and things like that. But most companies do have some sort of, percentage where they'd like to get to in a certain amount of time or things like that to maintain government contracts and things like that.
Kelly?
Yeah, so we do not have any quotas. I will say just like a short background off of Sheets. So Sheets still is, has always been a family-owned company. So Sheets started in Altoona, which is not too far from IUP. That area specifically, it started just with the Sheets family, started as a dairy farm, and now it's progressed as to what it is now, which is gas station, plus everything else that we have in several different states. So starting out initially as a company, which was, over 70 years ago now, diversity wasn't great because it was a family-owned business in one set area. As we're moving into new areas, that is something that we're looking at as to, are we growing into more diverse areas? That's something that we definitely take into consideration. It's nothing that we have to meet a quota for. But I think we're kind of all like on the same page here, as we don't have that exact quota. But like Jessica said, if you're not progressing with whatever the change is, your company is not going to succeed. So whatever is coming, it's, we've changed so many different policies, not even just based off of an individual, like tattoos, piercings. It just doesn't make sense for us to turn people away for being themselves. If you come to work and you're an excellent person, that's all we're really looking for. So as far just going off that basic question there, no, we do not have a quota, but of course we're always looking to add in more diversity on every level.
Yeah. Again, we all don't have a quota, at least from what I am aware of, being a university. But something that we've really been looking at is what is our process, and why, or how can we attract more identities, basically that, like, we're seeing that we only have certain identities who are applying to our positions, things like that. how are we marketing ourselves and where are we putting out the job applications? So I know that has been a big focus for us of, you know, how are we sharing the position? What language are we using? What barriers have we unintentionally set up that, you know, some folks don't feel like they want to apply or can apply or feel comfortable? So that's where our perspective is, as someone who does hiring, as well, especially for like student staff. That has been a big thing that I've been tackling, not only with the language that we use in our job descriptions, but where are we kind of posting it and what audience are we reaching and who aren't we reaching with that?
Yes, yeah, definitely. And that's been my experience too previously. Again, I used to work in university housing as well. And I know we would often in our various processes would look and make sure, like, how are we visible versus diversity, not invisible diversity, you know, the things that we can't see, but things that we knew about students and where we at least as represented, if not more representative than our university at large. So definitely all good things all around. Kind of want to ask, is there any questions from anyone in the room? Seeing a lot of no. Anybody else in Zoom? If not, I'll go to one of my other ones, and I'm trying to look at what I have here, and considering the conversation we just had for about the last 20 minutes, like, where do I even want to go? And I'm thinking I want to go here because we really didn't talk about this part of it. I guess, are there any sort of legal obligations, protections that exist for folks who are LGBTQIA employees in the workplace? And obviously we know they vary region by region because we have some examples that we've already cited, but are there any particular areas that some of you might be aware of where there actually are maybe some more protections than there are in other locations? And if the answer is no,
I mean, for in the university setting, we have things like Title IX, and I think Title VIII. But so, you know, the ones, especially when it comes to like employment, of like, you cannot discriminate on sex, race, things like that. And as we're seeing more court cases, not only at the state level, but the country level, federal level, things like that, we'll see that kind of play into employment as well. So, you know, the cases keep going back and forth, it feels like, state versus federal. But I think that's going to have a big kind of play into how we operate.
Figured I'd throw it out there. I know I'm certainly not an expert in this topic either. So, Jessica?
Yeah, I was just gonna say it definitely varies based on the location that you're in. So if you are someone who's, you know, kind of concerned, you definitely want to make sure that you're taking a look at where you're located. I know one of the things, I have a friend who, and you also want to be paying attention because laws can change very quickly. I have a friend that is from Kentucky. He's actually a therapist. He was very involved in helping people to transition. And so after there were some law changes, if he had continued down the path with some of his patients, he actually would lose his license. So being very, very mindful of, you know, what industry that you're in and kind of what that looks like. I would also say it's very important too, to do a lot of research about the organization that you're looking to get into. And then also as you are interviewing. So if you're somebody who is a university student and, you know, as you're going through the interview process, a lot of companies do a really, really great job of coming on campus and recruiting, but ask some of the tough questions. I think, you know, as we continue to see some generational changes, I feel like Gen Z is not really here for, you know, people discriminating. And I don't think that's just of their own like group, whatever group they may consider themselves to identify with. It's just in general. And so I would say, you know, ask the questions, because chances are if an organization isn't willing to answer those questions or don't want to offer you a job as a result of them, then it's probably not a spot that you want to work anyway. So, you know, keeping that in mind, obviously being respectful and thoughtful about the questions that you're asking, but also asking those tough questions, because, you know, your first job out of college is very important, and making sure that you fit in with the organization is important as well. And then if you are thinking of relocating for a role, making sure that you're doing some, you know, some research as well, as far as what things look like. Oftentimes too, you know, one of the things you can certainly ask about, or you could ask to speak with someone in an ERG, which stands for Employee Resource Group, which Bree had mentioned previously. But a lot of organizations have different ERGs that you can be a part of. Anything from, you know, there's often one that's maybe more women-based, sometimes Hispanic, LGBTQIA+. There's oftentimes people of color. It just kind of depends on the organization, what groups that they've stood up. But you do have the opportunity, if you get to that kind of final round interview or offer stage, to say, hey, can I speak with someone from your, you know, one of your Asian America ERG, and, you know, get the opportunity to say like, hey, what is the culture really like there for me? What would this look like? You know, what does the ERG look like? So I would say that's another, you know, kind of thing that you can do is reach out to the ERGs as well, and learn a little bit more about the organization.
Bree, Kelly, anything to add?
I'm definitely not a pro when it comes to the legal obligations inside of everything, but I do really like Jessica's point of asking those hard questions. You know, when you are talking to someone from the company, a lot of times, at least in my position, I get the same question from everyone, you know, and it's always those same basic questions. But when someone asks me those harder to answer or a little bit more in-depth questions, that's what I like, because then I get to kind of talk about all of the great things that the company does have to offer. One of them being ERGs. So being able to connect them with someone else who is maybe a little bit higher up in our ERGs, who can give them that perspective, I think is definitely a great point. And just kind of moving forward from there and seeing like where else we can connect them with.
Bree, anything to add?
I don't really have much to add. Much like everybody said, it is going to be varied based on, you know, the state. So actually, I think it was last year, like New York State, they passed a law where you're not able to discriminate against anybody based on their perceived sex or gender. And I think the Pennsylvania House just passed a bill of the same caliber, though it's not approved through the Senate yet. So everything is always just going to be like piecemeal and everything like that. So I do want to, you know, like I said, kind of highlight what everybody has said before about like employee resource groups. I'm really heavy involved in mine and things like that. But like Jessica said, that really use that interview piece, not just for your, you know, for you, so you get to, you know, answer questions. It's really an opportunity for you to ask questions, right? You want to make sure that you can see yourself in that company. So it's more than just saying, you know, like what kind of skills, you know, would best fit this role, which, you know, like Kelly says, I'm sure she knows she gets that question a lot. And obviously that's one of the more common ones, but, you know, put us to the fire, make us think about ways that like, you know, make us think of some things that we have never thought about before. That's going to be a great way to like help put that, push that company forward, right? Somebody now asked me about these questions, like, I don't know about these, like, are we even thinking about this? These are the conversations that we need to go back to my HR department with, you know, our employee resource groups, and sit there and say, like, how can we become a little, not even like more progressive, but even more like inclusive and more equitable in terms of like what we do and how we do business here. And, you know, that doesn't really start unless somebody asks that question. So I would definitely highlight that recommendation.
Excellent. Thank you. We probably have time. I'm going to do maybe one more question, and then I always have kind of like my standard sort of wrap up about, you know, resources and those kind of things. If folks have those, but I kind of want to go kind of on this line of, we've mentioned about the employee resource groups, but are there some other examples of LGBTQIA friendly benefits, policies, et cetera, that an organization has that might attract that kind of diverse talent? Some examples that we haven't maybe talked about yet. Either that you see in your own organization or others. Go ahead, Bree.
If I can. So, obviously most companies are going to give full comprehensive benefits and everything like that, and that's great, right? We all need to go to the doctor. We need to go to the dentist. I would hopefully like to say your company's adding towards your 401k, right? That's great. But if you are somebody who is thinking of transitioning, right, and that's really important to you as you become an adult, right, that is a question that you should definitely ask and double check within your benefits package. A lot of surgeries and things like that are not, I want to say, medically necessary. And so they do fall under like cosmetic surgeries, which you would have to pay out of pocket. But Sherwin-Williams does have some of our transition surgeries available and covered under some of our employee benefits, our health benefits, and things like that. So these are great questions to ask to your employer once you get that benefits package and things like that, have it come through. So I would definitely say make sure that you know all of your options and ways that the company can help you as you move forward, whether that, in whatever space that you may be in. So I would definitely take that recommendation as well as, I know it can kind of be kind of intimidating, but try to find somebody like within your company, somebody who is out proud, right, and able to help you like navigate some of these waters. I know, Sherwin-Williams, we're really big on mentorship here. Like I wouldn't be here and being myself if I didn't see that other person who was in the role just like me, and know that it was okay to do so, but being able to, have that somebody really to like hold your hand and like have those conversations with. Maybe you didn't have the best of days, or you really need somebody to, help you, as you never seen a queer person or a trans person in that role before. If you can't see it, you can't be it sometimes. And so, try to make sure that, like I said, make sure you have that mentor, make sure you have somebody to ask, is definitely going to be, set you apart in your job search moving forward.
Excellent. Jessica.
I was just going to say another thing that I think is equally important, and this doesn't really matter what community you're in, but also making sure that there are good mental health services and benefits. So I think so often people talk about going to the dentist and the eye doctor and the doctor, because those are all important, but it's equally important that you feel like you can have mental safety at your work, and that they're also providing those benefits. So I would say that's something that, you might be like, oh, I don't need those services. I'm fine. And then a parent passes away, or you have some other transition that happens within your life, or COVID hits. All of those things are things that you can't really foresee. So you want to make sure that, if you are moving into an organization, checking in as well to see, what do, potential mental health services look like. And then there are often, and I don't know why it's like slipping my mind the initials that it is, but there are oftentimes organizations will additionally pay for benefits that will help you with, if you need like a lawyer, or if you need, X number of counseling sessions, they'll cover it 100%, all of those things. And I don't know why the name of it is like slipping my mind right now. So if anybody else thinks of it, let me know. But that's something else that is can be pretty valuable as well. So figuring out what those look like, and you certainly can, whenever you get a job offer, you certainly can ask to take a look at, what benefits look like, what that looks like to you. And then not just from a surgical standpoint, but oftentimes when people are transitioning, they have a lot of medications that are that people need consistently, whether that be hormone replacement, et cetera. So making sure and taking a look to see, what that coverage looks like as well.
Jessica, I think what you were thinking of is an employee assistance program, an EAP.
Yes, 100% what I was thinking. I was like, I can't remember the initials, and I should. Yep, EAP is 100% it.
Took me a couple of seconds to think of it. wait a minute, I know what that is, because they send us emails about it usually at the beginning of every semester about like, hey, don't forget. But other folks, Kelly, Kayla.
Yeah, I was racking my brain as to what that was called too, because I was like, I know we have that program, and I went and looked it up on our internal site. So we do offer the EAP, which I've seen individuals use for, like you said, lawyers, or if a parent does pass away, just the assistance there. We also have an employee hotline, which is an anonymous call line to where they could call for literally anything. If they just need to talk, if they need to talk about something more specific, or they're looking for help, or they need financial advice, whatever it is, they'll be connected to someone who's going to be able to help them and just listen. And that's a 24/7 phone service line. Actually, funny that you mentioned mental health, because I know it was advertised on our internal page today as Mental Health Awareness Day. So good timing on that one. But just some other things that we offer is we've just recently started, I believe within the last 2 years, teledoc. So we have, just going off of that, like mental health, it's not easy for everyone to get to the doctors, or it might just be uncomfortable for some people. So they have that option to do teledoc via their phones, and that comes at a $0 copay, as well as any like mental behavioral health services also comes at a $0 cost copay. I think something like, if you're looking into things like that with a company, I think it's important to also look at what are their leave options. If you need to have a mental leave, is that covered? Is that not covered? How long do you get? How long do you have to be employed before that is covered? So just certain things like that. Just some other things that we offer. I don't want to talk too long because I know we're getting close to the end here, but we also offer parental leave. So not just maternity leave, we offer for everyone. And then we also have adoption assistance. So I believe that is a newer part of our programs within the last couple years, but we offer adoption assistance. As far as details into that, I'm not 100% sure, but I took note of, Bree, you said the transitioning surgeries. So that's definitely something I want to inquire about. And I know just personally from people I know who I work with, fertility assistance, for same-sex couples, what does that look like on their end? So.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything else to add to that, but I do want to raise the point of, you are interviewing the company just as much as they're interviewing you. And that's something I wish someone would have told me when I first started interviewing for jobs, because I was like, yeah, whatever, you're paying me, let's do it. So I just want to highlight that and remind yourself that you are interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you.
Yeah, definitely finding ways to learn what the culture of an organization is like, how they might handle some of these issues. And I think at that point, we're right up on time. Sometimes I usually ask if there's any sort of resources. If people want to throw some things in the chat, I can always include those in the notes for YouTube, as well as I can send them out to the folks who are here in the room. I know we already got one from Jessica from her company to do a follow on LinkedIn. But if there's other folks, podcast at YouTube, even if it's after the fact, send it to me. I can get it out there to folks. But at this point, I want to thank everybody, both in the room as well as those joining us online, for joining us for this discussion tonight. And again, thank you to HRT Solutions for their co-sponsorship of the event. And again, thank you to Bree, Kayla, Kelly, and Jessica for being panelists here. And if no one has anything else, I think we're good to go. Everybody have a good night.